The rich don't cry. The rich don't feel. The rich just count their money while we starve to death in the streets. Those were the words David Miller heard from a boy of barely 8 years old on a rainy August night, back when he thought nothing left in life could surprise or move him. But that little boy, barefoot and soaked by the rain, wearing a torn yellow t-shirt and red pants 2 sizes too big, didn't know that the man sitting on that park bench wasn't simply another heartless millionaire. He was a broken man who had lost everything he loved, and who, paradoxically, was hungrier than anyone on the streets of Los Angeles. Hunger for something that money could never buy. Hunger for a reason to keep breathing. And that night, under the relentless rain, a boy named Noah would ask him the simplest and most devastating question anyone had asked him in 8 months. "Are you hungry too?" The August rain fell over Los Angeles with that melancholic persistence that seemed to want to wash away the city's sins. David Miller left his residence in Beverly Hills for the 7th consecutive night, driving his black BMW through streets he knew by memory, but which now seemed foreign to him, as if they belonged to another man's life. At 35 years old, David was the owner of the most important real estate development firm in California, with projects extending across the entire West Coast. He had built skyscrapers, shopping malls, entire residential communities, but none of his constructions had been able to fill the monumental void that had opened in his chest since that December morning 8 months ago, when he received the call that shattered his world. He drove without a fixed destination, although his hands on the steering wheel knew exactly where they were taking him. Griffith Park, that green oasis in the middle of the urban chaos, had become his nightly refuge, not because he particularly liked it, but because there, under an old oak tree, was a wooden bench where he could sit alone, far from the compassionate stares of his employees, far from his family's attempts at comfort, far from the world that expected him to remain the strong and unbreakable David Miller he had always been. On that bench, he could take off the mask and simply be a broken man weeping for the loss of his wife, Valerie, and the baby he never got to meet. Valerie had been his everything. They met in college when he was studying civil engineering and she was studying architecture. It was love at first sight, the kind that only exists in movies or in the dreams of hopeless romantics. They married 3 years later in an intimate ceremony in Maui, and spent the next 9 years building not just a successful company, but a life full of shared plans and dreams. The biggest of those dreams was to have a family, but fate, cruel and capricious, had denied them that gift time and time again. 5 years of fertility treatments, 3 attempts at in vitro fertilization, countless nights crying in each other's arms after every negative result, until finally, miraculously, Valerie got pregnant naturally. She was 3 weeks pregnant when she decided to go to the doctor to confirm it. 3 weeks that became an eternity of renewed hope. David remembered that day perfectly. Valerie had left early, radiant with happiness, with that smile that lit up any room. "Today, I'm confirming you're going to be a dad, my love," she had told him before kissing his forehead. "I'll call you as soon as I leave the office." But the call never came. Instead, 2 hours later, the police arrived at his office. A delivery truck had swerved into the oncoming lane on Sunset Boulevard. The impact was instantaneous. Valerie died before reaching the hospital, the baby that was just beginning to form in her womb. David lost not only his wife, but also the chance to be a father, the dream they had chased for years with unbreakable determination. Since then, David had turned into a ghost inhabiting his own life. The company kept running because he had hired competent managers who made decisions in his absence. His family insisted he seek professional help, but he flatly refused. His friends tried to pull him out of his depression with trips to Vegas, barbecues, empty distractions that only made the abyss inside him more evident. He stopped eating almost completely, losing nearly 20 pounds in 8 months. He stopped sleeping more than 3 or 4 hours a night, chased by nightmares where he relived over and over again the moment the police knocked on his door. He stopped living. In reality, he only existed. He breathed out of inertia. He kept waking up every morning because his body didn't know how to do anything else. That Monday night, with the rain falling softly over Los Angeles, David parked his car. He left the BMW in the usual spot and walked through the drizzle to his bench under the oak tree. He didn't care about getting wet. He didn't care about anything, really. He sat on the damp wood, wearing a gray suit that probably cost more than an average family's monthly salary, but to him it was just meaningless fabric. He pulled the photo he always carried from his inside jacket pocket, protected in a plastic sleeve. In it, Valerie was smiling on their wedding day in that simple yet elegant white dress she'd chosen, her hazel eyes shining with happiness, her hands intertwined with his. 9 years ago, when they still believed love conquered all, that together they could overcome any obstacle. "Why did you leave me, my love?" David whispered to the photograph as tears began to roll down his cheeks, mixing with the rain. "How am I supposed to go on without you? How do I live in this empty house, in this empty life, without your laughter, without your dreams, without our baby?" His voice cracked on the last word. The baby that was never born, that never even had a name, that only existed for 3 weeks as a promise of hope before becoming another source of unbearable pain. David had imagined 1,000 times what that stolen life would have been like. Sleepless nights with a newborn, first steps, laughter in the backyard, Halloweens full of costumes and candy. All of that had died in an instant, at an intersection on Sunset Boulevard under the bright sun of a December noon. As he wept looking at the photo, David heard small footsteps approaching. He quickly put the photo away and wiped the tears from his face with his jacket sleeve, expecting a park ranger asking him to leave. But when he looked up, he found something he didn't expect. A little boy, about 8 years old, was standing about 3 meters away, watching him with a mix of curiosity and caution. The boy was soaked to the bone, with dark brown hair plastered to his forehead, barefoot on the wet grass. He was wearing a yellow t-shirt 3 sizes too big, torn at the left shoulder and stained with dirt, and worn-out red pants held up by a makeshift cord. In his thin, almost emaciated arms, he held a small gray teddy bear missing an ear. The boy looked at him with dark eyes that were too big for his thin face, with that piercing gaze only found in children who have seen too much suffering for their age. He showed no fear, just genuine curiosity mixed with something David couldn't identify right away. Compassion, perhaps, recognition. As if that little boy could see right through his expensive suit and his successful appearance, straight to the shattered heart beating weakly in his chest. David froze, not knowing what to say or do. It was nearly midnight, and such a small child was alone in the park in the rain, shoeless, with clothes totally unsuited for the weather. His mind, dulled by months of depression, took a few seconds to process the scene. Where were this kid's parents? Why was he alone at this hour? Why did he look so thin, with sunken cheeks and arms like sticks? "Are you hungry like me too?" the boy asked in a soft but clear voice, breaking the silence only interrupted by the sound of rain falling on the oak leaves. The question was simple, direct, asked with that brutal honesty only children possess, but it hit David like a punch to the gut. Hunger. How long had it been since he felt real hunger? That desire to eat that wasn't just a mechanical obligation. While he sat in his mansion surrounded by food prepared by his chef that he barely touched, this boy wandered the streets, asking strangers if they also felt that painful emptiness in their stomachs. "I'm not hungry," David replied after a moment. His voice was still raspy from the tears. "Are you out here alone? Where are your parents?" The question seemed absurd to him even as he asked it. It was obvious the boy was alone. It was obvious that something terrible had happened in his life for an 8-year-old to be wandering around a park at midnight. The boy shrugged with a gesture conveying a resignation too devastating for his age. "I don't have parents. I only have Teddy," he said, showing the worn plush toy. "We live around here. I saw you and thought maybe you were hungry too because you look sad, just like I get when I can't find food." His words were simple, but they held a painful wisdom. This child had learned to recognize hunger in the faces of others, not just physical hunger, but something deeper, more devastating. David watched the little one with a mix of shock, compassion, and something else he hadn't felt in 8 months. Genuine curiosity for something beyond his own pain. "What's your name?" he asked, feeling his frozen heart start beating to a different rhythm. The boy took a couple of steps closer, losing a bit of his initial caution. "I'm Noah, and you live in that big house you can see from up here." David felt a jolt of surprise. The boy knew his home, which meant he probably lived nearby on the surrounding streets. "Yeah, I live there. My name is David." Noah smiled for the first time, and that simple, genuine smile cut through the layers of pain wrapping around David like light piercing the darkness. "David is a handsome man," the boy said sincerely. "You're rich, right? So why are you crying? Rich people don't cry. Rich people don't feel. Rich people just count their money while we starve out here on the streets." The honest brutality of those words hit David with a force he wasn't expecting. An 8-year-old boy had just put into words exactly what society thought of people like him. That money made them immune to suffering, that his tears weren't real, that their hearts couldn't break the same way as the hearts of those who had nothing. But Noah hadn't said it with cruelty or resentment. He'd said it like someone repeating a truth they've been taught, with the innocence of someone who doesn't fully understand the weight of their words. "Rich people cry too, Noah," David replied with a gentleness that surprised even himself. "Sometimes we cry because we've lost something that all the money in the world can't bring back. I lost someone very special to me." His voice cracked slightly at the end, but he didn't try to hide it. There was something about this boy's presence that completely disarmed him, making it impossible to keep up the facade. "Did she die?" Noah asked with that direct frankness only children possess, stepping a bit closer until he was barely a meter away. David nodded, unable to say the words out loud. "My mom died too," Noah continued, clutching Teddy against his chest. "I was 6 years old. I've lived alone ever since." The simplicity with which the boy narrated his tragedy made David's heart clench painfully. This little guy had lost his mother at 6 years old and had survived 2 years alone on the streets of Los Angeles. "And you've lived on the street ever since?" asked David, feeling a mix of horror and admiration for this boy's strength. Noah nodded as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Uh-huh. Sometimes it's hard, especially when it's cold or when there's no food. But Teddy keeps me company. He lost something important too," he said, pointing to the teddy bear's missing ear. "That's why we understand each other." David looked at the worn-out bear and saw a perfect metaphor for their own lives. All 3 of them were incomplete. They had lost essential parts of themselves and were trying to survive with those voids. "Do you have food at your house?" Noah asked shyly, looking in the direction of David's home. The question was simple, but loaded with a need that David had forgotten existed. "Yes, I have lots of food, more than I can eat." It was the truth. His chef, Maria, prepared 3 meals a day that he barely touched. "So why don't you eat it?" Noah asked with genuine confusion. "When I find food, I get really happy. I eat it all because I don't know when I'm going to eat again." His words were like daggers piercing the bubble of self-pity David had been living in. While he let food go to waste because he didn't have an appetite, this boy went days without eating, celebrating every bite like a gift. "I haven't been hungry since my wife died," David explained, surprised by his own honesty. "It's like my body forgot how to feel those things." Noah watched him with an intensity uncommon for someone so young. "That's because you're hungry for something else. My mom used to say that sometimes people have a hunger of the heart, not the stomach, and that hunger hurts the most." David felt tears returning to his eyes. An 8-year-old boy who literally went hungry on the streets had just diagnosed with exact precision what he hadn't been able to express in 8 months. He had a hunger of the heart, hunger for Valerie, for her laugh, for their plans together, for the baby that never came to be. Hunger for a purpose, for a reason to get up every morning. Hunger for something that gave meaning to keep breathing. "Do you want to come to my house to eat something?" David asked impulsively, without thinking too much. Noah looked at him with suspicion for the first time. "My mom told me never to go to strangers' houses, that there are bad people." His mother, despite everything, had taught him to protect himself. "Your mom was right," David conceded, "but I promise I won't hurt you. I just want to give you some food, and maybe you can help me with what you said, with the hunger of the heart." Noah looked at Teddy as if asking the bear for advice. After a moment that seemed eternal, he nodded slowly. "Okay, but Teddy comes with me. And if you try anything funny, I'm gonna run really fast. I'm really good at running." David felt something like a smile forming on his lips, something he hadn't experienced in months. "Deal, and Teddy is welcome too." They walked together from the park to the house. Noah kept a safe distance, but he watched everything with curious eyes. When they got to the electric gate, the boy stopped, amazed. "Your house is huge. How many people live here?" he asked with his mouth open. "Just me," David replied, feeling the absurd vastness of his loneliness for the first time. "It's way too big for just one person, don't you think?" Noah nodded emphatically. "Like 100 people could live inside this house?" David turned on the kitchen lights and opened the fridge. It was full of food prepared by Maria. Fresh fruit, vegetables, meats, cheeses, fresh-baked bread. Noah froze, staring at the contents, his eyes shining with a mix of amazement and hunger. "Is all this yours?" he asked with a trembling voice. "All this, and I don't even eat it." "What a waste, right?" said David, seeing his situation from a devastating new perspective. "What do you like to eat?" David asked while taking out ingredients. "Everything," Noah answered honestly. "When you're really hungry, everything tastes good." David made grilled cheese sandwiches with cheddar, mac and cheese on the side, and poured a big glass of chocolate milk. He placed the plate in front of Noah, who looked at the food like it was treasure. "Can I start?" he asked with a politeness that surprised David. "Of course, it's all yours." Noah ate with a restrained desperation, trying not to look too hungry, but unable to stop himself from devouring every bite. David watched him, feeling something inside his frozen chest begin to thaw. While the boy ate, David surprised himself by serving a plate for himself. Also, for the first time in months, he tasted the food Maria made. It tasted good. It had flavor. He had forgotten that food could taste like something other than ash in his mouth. "Is it good?" David asked. Noah nodded with his mouth full, cheese melting at the corners of his lips. "It's the most delicious thing I've ever eaten in my whole life. The lady who cooks for you is really good." David smiled sadly. "Yeah, Maria is excellent. She comes every day to make food that I don't eat." The irony of the situation wasn't lost on either of them. As Noah finished his second plate, David asked him, "Don't you have any family who can take care of you?" "No one." The boy shook his head. "It was just me and my mom. She worked as a waitress, but when she got sick, they let her go. After she died, nobody wanted me. They told me I was too little, that I was too much work." His words were crushing in their simplicity. A 6-year-old boy rejected by the world simply for existing. "And how have you survived these 2 years?" David asked, equal parts admiring and horrified. "I sleep where I can. Sometimes under overpasses, sometimes in the park. I look for food in dumpsters or beg at traffic lights. Some days I find food, others I don't. But Teddy always tells me that tomorrow will be better." David felt tears in his eyes again. This boy had faced more adversity in 8 years than many people do in their whole lives. "Noah, can I ask you something?" David said after a moment. "Sure." "Why aren't you scared of me? Your mom taught you not to trust strangers, but you came with me." Noah thought carefully before answering, chewing slowly. "Because you were crying just like I cry sometimes. People who cry aren't bad. Bad people don't cry. My mom told me to always look for the kindness in people's eyes, and your eyes are sad, but good." The wisdom of this 8-year-old boy left David speechless. He had developed a survival system based on reading people's emotions, on recognizing kindness through pain. "Do you cry a lot?" David asked gently. "I used to cry more. Right after she died, I cried every night. Now, I only cry when I'm really hungry or really cold, and sometimes I cry when I miss her a lot, like on her birthday or on Thanksgiving." David felt his heart break a little more. "Noah, can I tell you something?" "Yeah." "I lost my wife 8 months ago. Since then, all I know how to do is cry. I can't eat, I can't work, I can't really live. I just exist." Noah stopped eating and looked at him with an uncommon seriousness. "She was a good person. She was the best person in the world. Then she wouldn't want you to be so sad forever. My mom always said that when you love someone, you want that person to be happy, even if you're not there anymore." Noah's words cut through 8 months of self-pity like a sharp knife. Valerie wouldn't want to see him like this, consumed by his pain, wasting his life. She would want him to live, to find a way to move on, to do something good with the time he had left. "You are very wise for being only 8 years old," David said with a trembling voice. "I'm not wise. I just learned that being sad doesn't bring people back, and if you stay sad too long, you forget to live, and then it's like you're dead too." David froze. An 8-year-old boy had just described exactly what had been happening to him. He had become one of the living dead, inhabiting his life without actually living it. If this story is touching your heart, I invite you to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss more stories that remind us what really matters in life. And I'd love to know, have you ever met someone who, like Noah, taught you a life lesson when you least expected it? Share your experience in the comments. Sometimes the wisest teachers have the smallest voices. After Noah finished eating, David showed him around the house. The boy walked cautiously, gently touching the walls, the furniture, as if he feared everything might disappear at any moment. "Why do you need such a big house?" he asked, looking around the main room with its high ceilings and huge windows. David felt a lump in his throat. "My wife and we wanted to have children. We dreamed of filling this house with kids running, laughing, playing. That's why we bought such a big one." "And why didn't you have children?" Noah asked with that direct curiosity that knew no bounds. David sat on the sofa, inviting the boy to do the same. "We tried for many years, but my wife's body couldn't hold on to the babies. It was very hard for us. Every time we tried, we had hope, and every time it didn't work, it was like dying a little bit." Noah sat next to him, hugging Teddy. "That sounds very sad." It was. But finally, after years, my wife got pregnant. We were so happy, Noah. We were going to be parents after waiting so long. "And what happened?" the boy asked, though his voice suggested he already sensed the answer. "She went to the doctor to confirm it. She left very early that morning, so happy, with that smile that lit up everything. She told me she'd call as soon as she left the office, but she never called. A truck ran a red light on the boulevard and crashed into her car. She died instantly. The baby, too. She was only 3 weeks pregnant." Tears rolled freely down David's cheeks. Now, without shame, without trying to hide them. Noah stayed silent for a moment, processing the information with a maturity he shouldn't have at his age. "So, this house was waiting for children," he said finally. "Yes, it was waiting for laughter and games and life. And now, it's empty, just like me." Noah looked around the huge room, then turned his gaze back to David. "It doesn't have to be empty forever. Houses are made to have people inside, and people are made to take care of other people." David looked at the boy with a mix of wonder and something else, something he hadn't felt in 8 months, the tiny spark of a possibility. "Noah, do you want to take a bath? I can give you clean clothes." The boy's eyes lit up in a way that broke David's heart. "Can I? It's been a long time since I bathed in a real bathroom. Sometimes I just use the fountains at the park when no one's around." David took him to one of the second-floor bathrooms, showed him how to use the shower, and left clean towels. While Noah showered, David searched through the clothes he had kept of Valerie's, things he hadn't had the courage to donate. He found a small hoodie she used for lounging and some sweatpants that might fit the boy. When Noah came out of the bathroom, clean and with his damp hair combed back, David barely recognized him. Without the layer of dirt, he was a beautiful child, with delicate features and expressive eyes that now shined with a cleanliness that made them look younger, more innocent. "How do I look?" Noah asked shyly, doing a little spin. "You look great," David replied sincerely. "And Teddy, he's cleaner too. I washed him in the sink." The stuffed animal indeed looked less gray, though it was still missing an ear. David felt immense tenderness seeing how Noah had taken care to wash his only friend too. "Noah, it's getting very late. Do you want to sleep here tonight? Tomorrow we can figure out what to do." The boy's face lit up with a hope he tried to contain. "Really? Can Teddy stay too?" "Of course. You can both stay." David led him to what would have been the baby's room. He and Valerie had decorated it with so much love. Sky blue walls, light wood furniture, a small bed with guardrails that had never been used, curtains with stars and stripes for a patriotic touch, and a bookshelf full of stories no one had ever read. "This room is beautiful," Noah said in awe, gently touching the curtains. "Who was it for?" "It was for our baby," David replied, his voice barely a whisper. "My wife and I decorated it together. We spent weeks picking out every little detail, just imagining what it'd be like to see our son sleeping here." Noah immediately understood the weight of that space. "Can I sleep here? I promise I'll take really good care of the room. I promise I won't break anything." "You can sleep here as long as you want," David said, feeling a strange sensation in his chest. For the first time in 8 months, that room would finally serve the purpose it was created for, sheltering a child who needed love and safety. As Noah settled into bed, clutching Teddy tight against his chest, David watched him. The boy looked so small in that bed, so vulnerable, and yet he'd survived 2 years on the streets with a strength David could barely comprehend. "David?" Noah whispered in a sleepy voice. "Yeah? Thanks for the food, and the bath, and the bed. You're a good person, just like my mom used to say, that there are good people in the world." The boy's words touched something deep inside David. "No. Thank you, Noah." "Why are you thanking me?" "For reminding me that there are other people in the world besides me. For making me see my own selfishness. For showing me that while I was crying in a house full of food, there were kids like you starving on the streets." Noah yawned, his eyelids growing heavy. "You're not going to be so sad anymore." "I don't know," David answered honestly, "but I think you're teaching me that maybe I can do something good with my sadness. Maybe I can use it to help other people." Noah smiled weakly. "That sounds nice. Good night, David." "Good night, Noah. Good night, Teddy." David left the room, and for the first time in 8 months, he felt something different in his chest. It wasn't exactly happiness, but it wasn't the absolute emptiness he'd been carrying around either. It was something new, something fragile, hope. That night, David didn't cry himself to sleep. Instead, he lay awake thinking about Noah, about the hundreds of kids like him sleeping on the streets of Los Angeles, about the absurd injustice that he had so much while others had nothing. The next morning, David woke up with a feeling he hadn't felt in months. Purpose. He went down to the kitchen and found Noah already awake, sitting at the table with Teddy, gazing out the window at the garden. "Good morning," David said. "Good morning. Your house is prettier in the daytime. You can see so many trees and flowers." David cooked breakfast himself, something he hadn't done since before Valerie died. He made scrambled eggs, pancakes, bacon, and orange juice. They sat down to eat together, and David noticed that for the first time in 8 months, food actually tasted like something. "Noah, I want to ask you something important," David said after breakfast. "What is it? Do you want to stay here? Not just for today, but for good. Do you want this to be your family?" The boy stopped chewing and stared at him with wide eyes. Like you were my dad? Exactly like that. I could legally adopt you. You'd be my son, and this would be your home." Tears started rolling down Noah's cheeks. "Really? You're not going to send me back to the street?" David knelt in front of the boy and took his small hands in his own. "Never, Noah. I will never send you back to the street. Last night, you asked me a question that changed my life. You asked if I was hungry too, and you made me realize that yes, I am very hungry. Hungry to be a dad. Hungry to take care of someone. Hungry to give meaning to this life that I thought was over. You saved me last night, Noah. Now, Let me save you." Noah threw himself into David's arms, crying with an intensity built up from 2 years of loneliness and fear. "I always wanted a dad. My mom said that someday, someone was going to love me like their own son." David held him tight, feeling his own tears mix with the boy's. "Your mom was right. I love you like my own son, and I promise to take care of you, protect you, and love you every single day of my life." The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. David hired the best adoption lawyer he could find, started the legal paperwork, and reached out to social workers and psychologists. Noah went along with everything with surprising ease. When the psychologist asked if he wanted David to be his father, he answered, "He's already my dad. We're just doing the paperwork to make it official." "Why do you think he'd be a good father?" the therapist asked. "Because he was sad. Just like I was sad. But together, we aren't so sad anymore. And because he cares about me. And about Teddy. A dad who cares about your teddy bear is a good dad." During that time, something else began to change inside David. Noah had opened his eyes to a reality that had always been there, but one that he, safe in his bubble of privilege, had never truly seen. He started researching the situation of homeless children in California. He discovered there were more than 1,000 kids living on the streets of Los Angeles, not counting the ones in overcrowded shelters or extreme poverty. "Dad?" Noah said one afternoon while they were playing in the garden. He had started calling him that naturally, without anyone even asking. "Yes, son, there are a lot of kids on the street, just like I was. Why don't you help them too?" The question was simple, yet profound. "How do you think I could help them? Your house is really big. Could other kids live here? Ones who don't have a mom or dad? Just like a big family." The idea took root in David's mind like a seed that quickly started to sprout. With his fortune, with his resources, with this massive house, he could make a real difference. He started making plans that very night. He wouldn't just adopt Noah, he'd create a foundation. A foster home that could house 20 or 25 children, where they'd get not just a roof and food, but an education too. Therapy, love, and real opportunities, including after-school programs like soccer and art classes to build their confidence. 4 months later, Noah's adoption became official. At the court hearing, the boy wore a blue suit David had bought especially for the occasion. He was holding Teddy in his arms, who now had a new ear sewn on by Maria. "Noah Hernandez Miller," the judge said solemnly. "As of today, David Miller is officially your father." Noah ran to David and hugged him tight. "We're a real family now, Dad." "We are a real family, my son." 8 months after that rainy night in the park, David opened the Valerie and Noah Foundation, a shelter that could house 25 vulnerable children. The house had been completely transformed. The empty rooms now had bunk beds and colorful decorations. The garden had swings, a basketball hoop, and play sets. The main living room had turned into a study and play area. David had hired teachers, psychologists, social workers, and caregivers. Noah was the first to choose his new siblings, accompanying David on visits to the city shelters. "Dad, that little girl is crying just like I used to," Noah would say, pointing at a shy 6-year-old. "And that boy is hugging a broken toy car, just like I used to hold Teddy. They need a family." The house, which had been empty and silent, was filled with life. Kids laughing, playing in the garden, doing homework at the dining table, watching movies in the living room. David drastically cut back his involvement in the real estate company, leaving it in the hands of capable managers, and dedicated his life entirely to the children. 1 year after that night in the park, David stood in the garden watching the 26 children, Noah plus 25 others, playing together. Noah, now 9 years old, had become a natural leader among the kids. He was always ready to help anyone in need, sharing his story to give hope to the new arrivals, and even organizing little talent shows to boost everyone's spirits. "Dad," Noah said, walking up to him. "Yes, son?" "Do you think my mom would be proud of me?" David hugged him. "I'm sure your mom is very proud, and I'm sure Valerie is also proud of what we've built together. Do you still get sad thinking about her?" David thought for a moment. The pain of losing Valerie would never completely go away, but it was no longer the paralyzing abyss it once was. Sometimes I do get sad. I miss her every day. But now, it's a different kind of sadness, one that lives side by side with the joy of watching all of you grow up happy. I learned that love doesn't die, it just transforms. Noah smiled. Like hunger, you had a hungry heart and I had a hungry tummy. But when we found each other, we fed each other, and now we feed everyone. That night, during dinner with all the kids around the huge table he'd had built, David asked for everyone's attention. "Kids, I want to make a toast." "With apple juice," shouted 6-year-old Sophia, raising her glass. David laughed. "With apple juice, I want to toast to our family. A family born on a rainy night, when a very brave boy asked me a question that changed my life forever." "That was me," Noah said proudly. "Did you save Papa David?" asked 5-year-old Carmen. "No," Noah answered seriously. "We saved each other, and then we saved you guys, because when you have love, you can share it. And when you share love, you get even more love back. It's like magic." "Noah is right," David said, his voice full of emotion. "Love is the only thing that grows when you divide it, and this family is the proof." After dinner, when all the children were asleep, David went to his room and picked up the photograph of Valerie he kept on his nightstand. He didn't look at it to cry anymore, but to smile, and to feel her presence as something bright instead of painful. "We did it, my love," he whispered to the photo. "We filled this house with children, just like we always dreamed. Not in the way we imagined, but maybe in a way that's even more beautiful, with barbecues in the backyard and summer camps on the horizon. Noah taught me that true love never dies. It just finds new ways to show itself." He put the photo away and went to check on the children before bed. His last stop was Noah's room. The boy was sleeping soundly, hugging Teddy, but he woke up when he felt David there. "Dad, are you okay?" "I'm doing just fine, son. I only came in to say goodnight. Dad, do you remember the question I asked you that night in the park? How could I forget? You asked me if I was hungry too. So, are you still hungry?" David looked out the window toward the garden where 25 children had played that day. He listened to the soft sounds of the children sleeping in the other rooms. He felt the weight of the love filling every corner of that house that had once been empty. "I'm not hungry anymore, Noah. Now I am full of love, full of purpose, full of gratitude. You taught me to feed my heart by feeding others." Noah smiled and closed his eyes. "Good night, Dad. I love you." "Good night, son. I love you too, more than words can ever say." David left the room and walked down the hallways of the house, listening to the quiet breathing of the children sleeping safely, for the first time in their lives. He stopped in front of the window facing the park where it all began. In the distance, he could see the bench under the oak tree where he used to cry every night. Now, that place represented not his lowest point, but the moment his life started to change. Valerie's love hadn't died with her. It had multiplied through Noah and through each of the 25 children who now called this house their home. A simple question from a hungry child had saved not only David's life but also the lives of 26 children who now had a family, a future, a chance, and everything. All because on a rainy August night, an 8-year-old boy had the courage to approach a crying stranger and ask, "Are you hungry too?" Thank you for joining us in this story that reminds us that sometimes the greatest act of love is opening our hearts to the pain of others. If this story touched your soul, please subscribe to our channel to keep sharing stories that make us more human. And tell us in the comments if you're watching from New York City or anywhere else in the world. We love knowing we're building a community united by stories that transform us. Until next time.